Thank you very much, Miriam. I would also like to thank everyone who has come to the to this panel because it's quite early in the morning. So I hope our talks do not disappoint you. So I'm very nervous. I'm sorry. I'll try to be brief and yeah, whatever. So my presentation is about the TV show Penny Dreadful. I don't know if you've watched it, but in case you haven't, I'm sorry, but I'm going to be spoiling the show a little bit. So since this presentation is also about the adaptation or the appropriation of Pygmalion in this TV series, and especially regarding Frankenstein's narrative, I'm going to be talking a little bit about this Greek myth, well, Greek and Latin myth. So the story of Pygmalion is a lasting one, as it has been continuously adapted and appropriated ever since ancient times. However, it was actually in the 19th century that the myth became especially popular. Stephen Guy Bray refers to this period as, and I quote, the golden age for retellings of the Pygmalion myth. And Isaac Joshua defines this era as the heyday of the myth. So the most famous retelling of the myth, as you might know, was in Ovid's Metamorphoses, in book 10 of these Metamorphoses. So in here, Pygmalion is described as a sculptor in Cyprus that remained a bachelor because he was appalled by the prostitutes' alleged wickedness and vices. So as a result, he wanted to create a woman that was modeled according to his idea of beauty and his idea of propriety. So he created a sculpture of a woman and fell in love with it. And he then begged Aphrodite, the goddess of love, to transform this sculpture into a flesh and blood woman, and she granted him that wish. So here on screen, you can see some of the most relevant 19th century revisitations or adaptations of Pygmalion's myth, which include the poems like Pygmalion, the Sculptor by Robert Buchanan, then William Morris, Pygmalion and the Image Poem Series, also Emily Henrietta Hickey's Pygmalion, A Sculpture and Other Poems. Then in the case of prose, we also have The New Pygmalion by William Hazlitt or George MacDonald's Phantastes. And then we have, of course, plays by Gilbert, Pygmalion and Galatea, or Ronald Ross, Edgar, or The New Pygmalion, and The Judgment of Tithonus. However, as you might know, one of the most famous adaptations of the Pygmalion myth was George Bernard Shaw's play Pygmalion, which was staged in 1921, but has traditionally been read in the context of other 19th century Pygmalion plays, according to Yeats. So now I'm going to introduce a little bit Penny Dreadful, the TV series. So Penny Dreadful is a Neo-Victorian Gothic TV series, which is made up of 3 seasons and was created by John Logan for Showtime and Sky. It is set in London in the 1890s and could be considered an adapted collage of a number of Victorian intertext, which include Bram Stoker's Dracula, also Oscar Wilde's The Portrait of Dorian Gray, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Robert Louis Stevenson, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and also some penny dreadfuls, most notably Malcolm Brymer and Thomas Pickett Prest, Varney the Vampire, or The Feast of Blood. So the first season of the series follows the spiritual medium Vanessa Ives, which you cannot see on the screen, sorry. So the woman on screen, that's the main protagonist, Vanessa Ives, and she's a spiritual medium. And then Sir Malcolm Murray, who is the father of Mina Murray from Bram Stoker's Dracula. So they recruit a group of detectives, or unlike detectives, because they have to look for Mina, who has disappeared. She has been captured by a group of vampires led by Dracula. So basically, this first season would be a very freely adaptation of Dracula. However, in this presentation, I'm going to be focusing on the second and third season of the series, which is more focused on Frankenstein. Well, again, a freely adaptation of Frankenstein's myth. And we have Dr. Frankenstein, which you can see on the second picture, as he resurrects the prostitute Brona Croft into Lily Frankenstein, her daughter and lover, okay, at the same time. So she's the third woman on the picture on screen. Okay, so now I'm going to be focusing on the analysis of the series. So Lily is the last of Dr. Frankenstein's creations. He originally resurrected her to be the bride of his first creature. Okay, the first creature would be the first picture. Okay, as you can see, he would be like an adaptation of Shelley's monster, or the most traditional monster, who is rejected by both society and his creator. So Dr. Frankenstein originally creates Lily Frankenstein to be the bride of this monster. However, he eventually falls in love with her. So before he created her, he also created another creature, Proteus, but he is killed by the first creature. Okay. So okay, sorry, I'm a bit lost. Okay, so Frankenstein accepts to resurrect Lily, who was formerly Brona Croft, a prostitute that was dying of consumption. But he speeds this death process as he asphyxiates her with a pillow, and then takes her to her home lab, and then he resurrects her there. From that moment on, after she is resurrected, he establishes a codependent relationship with Lily, in which he strives to provide for her as a mentor, teaching her how to navigate the human world again. So in other words, Dr. Frankenstein wants to exert this patriarchal and paternalistic control over Lily until she finally rebels. So their incestuous relationship, because he acts at first as a father to Lily, starts in a very subtle way as a domination game, where the doctor first uses her as an immortal doll that he can mold to his personal taste. So he transforms her body into an angelic Victorian beauty as he dyes her hair blonde and buys her white virginal clothes and corsets forcing her to be a proper Victorian woman. He buys her makeup and teaches her etiquette and shows her how to behave like a lady in public. Okay, so consequently, Dr. Frankenstein and Lily's incestuous relationship could be interpreted as a Neo-Victorian Gothic representation or appropriation of the Greek myth of Pygmalion and Galatea, even though, as Barbara Braid contends, the woman created by Frankenstein is not intended for himself, but for the creature, at least at first. Likewise, this is also a common literary theme defined by Elizabeth Frenzel as the animation of the statue or the artificial man. So according to Frenzel, well, I have the quote in Spanish there, but I'm going to translate it into English. It is my own translation, so Noemi, sorry. It would be the idea of producing a human being artificially, avoiding the sexual act, is one of humanity's great dreams. It is expressed it is expressed their inventive and creative impulse, end of quote. So this literary motif can be traced back to creation myths in several cultures, most notably in ancient Greece. In the case of artificial women, such as Pandora or Galatea, or Lily herself, they usually have a romantic function in literature, that of seducing a man. So as a consequence, Pygmalion is not only guilty of narcissism, but also of incest, as I mentioned before, since he is Galatea's fathering maker, as well as her husband. To sleep with her is to sleep with his own daughter, as Miller claims. In a similar vein, Lily is Dr. Frankenstein's creation, although she was a human woman in another life, and he molded her according to his definition of beauty. He gives her a name of his choice, Lily, the flower of rebirth, as Green contends, unlike his other two male creatures, who are allowed to choose their own names from a selection of literary and mythological characters. So the monster decides to call himself John Clare, as the 19th century poet, and then Proteus also is allowed to choose his name. So Dr. Frankenstein also wants her to follow his moral code and the gender conventions that he considers proper for a woman. Hence, Lily is arguably an appropriation of Galatea, a patriarchal creation that was meant to be submissive and obedient to her father and husband, but that eventually rebels against this masculine authority. So regarding the original text, Shelley's Frankenstein, Mary Shelley learned about Pygmalion's myth through Madame de Genlis's sketch, Pygmalion et Galatée, which she allegedly read before writing Frankenstein. In this text, Pygmalion's creation, Galatea, reads about the evils of mankind, just like Frankenstein's creature learns about human injustice through the books he reads in the DeLacy's cottage. Likewise, Pygmalion's myth through, likewise, the myth of Pygmalion and Galatea also merges with Frankenstein's story in that they both present, according to James, a fable of ideal love turning into one of malign possession, end of quote. So these would be like a toxic love story that also applies to Dr. Frankenstein and Lily's relationship in Penny Dreadful. In fact, in Robert Buchanan's poem, Pygmalion, an allegory of art that I think I mentioned before, Galatea is turned into a vampiric creature, a femme fatale, not so different from Lily Frankenstein in Penny Dreadful. And here I have a quote of this poem. Then the dawn stirred in upon her. When I opened eyes, I saw the gradual dawn and crimson her, like blood that blushed within her, and behold, she trembled and I shrieked. Also, Logan, the creator of the TV series, also seems to draw inspiration from other 19th century intertext of Ovid's Pygmalion, 19th and 20th century adaptations. So Lily seemingly has a duplicitous nature, as she first acts innocently, very coy and submissive, only to later become a violent misandrist, as I will later explain. This seems to be inspired by Bernard Shaw's play Pygmalion, where, and I quote from Joshua, the tension between Eliza's innocence and her artifice must be seen as a departure from Ovid's one-dimensional Galatea. End of quote. Galatea's duplicitous nature is recuperated in Penny Dreadful, since at first Lily pretends to be a perfect angel in the house, an innocent and empty vessel that does not remember her previous life and expects Dr. Frankenstein to help her create a new one for her. However, as time passes, she gathers enough confidence and a powerful ally, Dorian Gray, in the series, and she drops her act and shows her true self. A scorned woman and a victim of gender-based violence, back when she was a prostitute, a human prostitute. And she now plans to take down patriarchy. As a result, Lily and Dr. Frankenstein relationship brings to the fore these two questions that I asked myself. So first of all, what are the ethical implications of creating an immortal woman according to a man's idealized conception of beauty? And the second one, does he have a right to impose his romantic ideals and gender conventions on her just because he created her? So from the very moment he created Lily as a companion for his other male creature, Dr. Frankenstein was exerting his patriarchal authority over her and constructing her as a mere desirable object in the hands of another man. Later on, when he starts this incestuous relationship with her, he becomes both her father and partner, the two ultimate masculine and patriarchal authorities in Victorian England. So it is important to talk about the role of birth mothers or biological mothers in reproductive terms, because their identity is known and certain, whereas that of fathers might be uncertain or suspicious in some cases. This poses a threat to the patriarchal status quo, as the father's authority might be challenged, while the mother's is reaffirmed. However, in the case of Galatea's and Lily's birth, there is not a mother figure involved in the process. Thus, the mother's threat to patriarchal order and authority is removed here, and the father figure, Pygmalion and Dr. Frankenstein, respectively, retain the traditional traits of masculine authority, but also appropriate the female or motherly ones. So for Tracy M. Halstead, in ancient times, masculinity meant, and I quote, power over others. It also meant power to define reality, as might make right. So for Galatea, questioning the patriarchal Pygmalion's rule in Cyprus or over her is strictly forbidden, and she must support it behind the scenes in relative silence. Nonetheless, Lily in Penny Dreadful subverts Galatea's traditional portrayal as an innocent and submissive woman. And as previously mentioned, she rebels against her father and lover and attempts to take down this patriarchal system. So when she wakes up after her resurrection, Dr. Frankenstein is her only reference point in a world that she does not remember, and that is a total mystery for her. As a result, she trusts him blindly at first, or so it seems, even though there are some early signs that anticipate her later misandry. So indeed, the first hints of her radical feminism that can be spotted in the scene when she is trying on some clothes that Dr. Frankenstein has bought specially for her, as you can see on screen. The fact that he is the one that chooses Lily's clothes and dresses her up seems to be inspired once again by Ovid's Pygmalion, where, and I quote from Ovid's original, he decks her limbs with robes and on her fingers sets splendid rings, a necklace around her neck, pearls in her ears, a pendant on her breast. So these items of clothing seem to have a twofold purpose. On the one hand, they are designed to make women attractive and pleasant, but also to keep them oppressed. So through the corsets, we see this imagery. Indeed, when Lily complains about wearing the corset as she finds it very constraining, Dr. Frankenstein claims that they are used to keep, and I quote, women corseted in theory and in practice, although a lot of women wear it because they flatter the figure. Despite Lily's apparent submission, her reply advances her radical critique of patriarchal control, as she claims, all we do is for men, isn't it? Keep their houses, raise their children, flatter them with our pain. So by the end of season 2 and through season 3, Lily unleashes her potential as an immortal woman by recruiting an army of prostitutes that seeks to overthrow patriarchy. She believes that women should not aspire to be equal to men, but actually to be superior to them, so that they should either enslave or kill or all violent men. Indeed, as Mel Kulke contends, this misandrist portrayal of Lily and her army is actually detrimental to the feminist cause because it portrays feminism as monstrous rather than promoting the public good and a more liberal, equal and safer society, a fitting 21st century misogynistic tribute to and replay of the 19th century backlash against the new woman. And I'm going to be concluding now. So nonetheless, season 3 ends with Lily being captured by Dr. Frankenstein and his colleague, Dr. Jekyll, who take her to Bedlam Asylum in order to inject her with a serum that will make her, and I quote, healthy, take away all your anger and pain and replace them with something much better. Calm, poise, serenity. We're going to make you into a proper woman. End of quote. So in the end, however, she begs the doctors not to erase her memories as she wants to remember her daughter, Sarah, who died alone one freezing night while she was working as a prostitute. The fact that the doctors only forgive her and spare her memories when she drops her rebellious act and displays a motherly stance more in line with Victorian precepts of Victorian femininity proves that this adaptation of Galatea reproduces misogynistic and patriarchal understandings of the myth. In spite of the series' seemingly feminist drive, it finally does not grant the female protagonist any possibility for female emancipation. So thank you for your attention, and I hope you enjoyed it.